Beautiful, beautifully bowled.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cricket Yarns with RH6, the Cricket Tragic. We're starting off 2022 with a massive guest on our show today. It is the man, the myth, the legend. That is Harry Solomons, founder and owner of Kingsgrove Sports Centre. Those of us involved in cricket, we all know who Harry is. But Harry, how's it going, man? How's it going up in the Hunter?
Hello, Rahman. Lovely to be here, mate. The Hunter is looking great, especially with all the rain we've been having. So it's all nice and green.
All nice and green. Before we start off, I just want to set the scene by telling our viewers how I actually met Harry, because this goes on to show the kind of person that he is and the passion that he has for the sport. Harry probably does not remember this. He meets cricket tragics and fans like me on a daily basis. But when I first came to Australia in 2004, before that, being a massive Mark Waugh fan, I read Mark Waugh's book by James Knight. And while reading that book, I came to know about Kingsgrove Sports and that Mark Waugh worked at Kingsgrove Sports, and a gentleman by the name of Harry Solomons owned it. Once I came down to Australia, I was a student at UNSW. I randomly sent Harry Solomons an email saying, "My name's Rahman, I'm a massive Mark Waugh fan, yada, yada, yada." And I just left my mobile phone number, hoping that someday he'd get in touch with me. I clearly remember this. I was at Parramatta Westfield walking with the family, and I get a call from an unknown number. I pick it up, and he goes, "Hi, Rahman, this is Harry Solomons from Kingsgrove Sports." I was absolutely taken aback. And he wanted to meet me. So me and my friend, we actually went down to Kingsgrove Sports. I met Harry for the first time. This was way back in 2004. And I've been in contact with him ever since. It's been a pleasure, Harry, getting to know you. I have yet to see someone who's got the passion for cricket as much as you do. Kingsgrove Sports, every time I'm in Sydney, I make it a point to go to Kingsgrove Sports. It's like a pilgrimage. Whenever I'm in Sydney, I've got to visit Kingsgrove Sports. I'm in my mid-40s. I still get excited by your store. I've been there heaps of times, seen you, your lovely wife, Rowaney, Hamish, Stuart. I've met all of them, and it still excites me. Harry, do you want to tell our viewers how exactly you came about with this whole idea of coming up with this cricket store?
Well, Rahman, firstly, I'm glad I met you because you've been also a very important customer for Kingsgrove. I'm glad you came to Australia, mate, and I'm glad that you have that cricket passion. But how we came to form Kingsgrove Sports, it's pretty simple story. I'm from Sri Lanka, played a lot of cricket in Sri Lanka. So when I came to Australia, obviously cricket, another cricket playing country, another country with a cricket passion. And, I started playing cricket and obviously just the sheer love of the Sri Lankan cricket lover mixed with the Australian passion for cricket. And obviously I was never good at anything else anyway. I thought I would be a decent salesman and a decent designer of cricket gear. So I thought, the ideal situation, if you're not good at anything, you might as well do what is best for you. And so therefore, the cricket shop. And a cricket shop was formed. And of course, at that time, it was very small. But that's a part of history,
Yeah. So, Harry, I understand that you actually used to play club cricket in Sydney, and you used to buy your gear from this store, which was going to go out of business. And you ended up buying them out.
Absolutely. There was this little store in Kingsgrove called Sporting Supplies, and I used to go there to buy my cricket gear. And one day when I was there, when I went there, he was closing down. So I said, "Oh, you can't close down. Kingsgrove needs a sports store. Kingsgrove needs a cricket shop." And he said, "Oh, no, I've decided to go wholesale in soccer. But what you can do is just buy my stock and start your own." And that probably prompted me to go across to the bank next door, which was my bank. At that time, I think it was called the CBA, now taken over by the National. But I went there and I had a very interesting chat with the manager, and he said, "What are you here for?" I said, "I'd like a loan." And he asked me what it was for. And I said, "I want to open the sports store next door because it's closing down." And he says, "Come tomorrow, I'll have $7,000 for you." And he gave me next day. He gave me $7,000, and I had a car which I sold for $2,000. I had a great whole sum of $9,000. And so Kingsgrove Sports Centre was started with the $9,000. We haven't looked back since, because I think it's about 46 years now in the business.
Wow. So, I mean, it is an iconic story. It is literally a part of Australian cricketing folklore, you know. I heard about Kingsgrove Sports when I was way back in Bangladesh from Mark Waugh's book. And obviously I was very curious about it. So started 46 years ago. And then we all know, I mean, I personally know this, but viewers would want to know this. You've had a lot of famous cricketers working for you at Kingsgrove Sports.
Well, one thing was when I started the store, it was very small and we had to grow. And I quickly realized that specializing in something rather than having a general sports store would be the way to go. So obviously, being the fact that I was Sri Lankan and I was cricket mad, and Australians were cricket mad, I think it was just a natural fit that I decided to specialize in cricket. So what happened was that if I had to specialize in something and do it well, I had to know the people that were playing the sport.
Right.
So what I did was I decided to start meeting a few players and sponsoring a few teams, and so therefore I started sponsoring Petersham. At that time, they were known as Petersham Marrickville, which was a great club. Then I also sponsored my own club, which was Cogra Boys. And then I realized that, starting to move with players, and I realized then that I need to get some players involved. But the employment of players generally came as we grew, and a lot later. My first job was to specialize in sponsoring cricket and cricketers. And cricket clubs and organizations. So I got involved in a small way with New South Wales Cricket, with New South Wales Junior Cricket and New South Wales Country Cricket. And that grew into meeting players, and of course the story then starts where we started growing,
So you've had the likes of Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh, Michael Clarke working at the store.
Certainly. Yeah.
Do you have any interesting stories with these guys working at the store?
Well, there's plenty of interesting stories, I think Mark and Steve were very passionate about their own personal cricket. So they were not the greatest of workers, but they were good guys, and they were doing very well in their cricket. So they got some exposure from us, and in the meantime I also got some exposure from them as they started playing in the Australian under-16 side, and then into the Australian under-19 side, and then into the New South Wales state side. Suddenly people were beginning to realize, hey, Jesus, that guy sold me some cricket bats. So, and then of course that fact alone started bringing in more customers into our shop. And then of course the fact that when they made the state team, that we sponsored them, and they worked at Kingsgrove, that was certainly credible for us. Mark was very a nice guy, very casual, very laid back guy. Steve was a lot more intense, and they both really knew where they were going and what they wanted to do. There was a young chap called Michael Clarke who came in as a 16-year-old. Now he
Wow.
was a different guy because he didn't expect to. I don't think he expected, as Mark and Steve did, to be playing for New South Wales in Australia. So he worked a lot harder. He was a lot more of a team man. He was very friendly with all the staff, got on beautifully with the staff, was more forthcoming, and of course then his career started blossoming, and he went straight from the Australian under-19 or under-17 side or something like that, straight into the state side, and suddenly he blossomed as quite a big time cricketer.
So Harry, when you took over the store at the initial, initial few years, you obviously bought out this other store. What were the sort of brands of bats that you were actually carrying at the store? Because now you've got a plethora of all brands, literally all major brands.
That's a very, very good point. Grey Nichols was obviously famous. They've Gun and Moore. It was all the old traditional English brands, Schlesinger, Stuart Surridge, and Duncan Fernley. They were the main, or the big, what we call the big five. And then, of course, St. Peter's suddenly started emerging as a threat to these folks, with Tony Gregg using it and quite a few of the West Indians. And so St. Peter's started coming in, and then I suddenly realized that I needed my own brand. And that's how Simons came in. And there was Mitre, all the old traditional brands. And the first big new brand to come in was then Simons. And I was personally involved in Simons, as you are well aware.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see, I picked that one off you when they were launched. We'll get to that. We'll get to Simons. But speaking of Simons, I remember you talked about sponsoring Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh. Probably correct in saying you sponsored them with Simons gear at the onset of their careers. And was there a bat called Star Wars?
Yes, absolutely. Well, when I started Simons in Australia, or when I got involved with the Indian manufacturers with Simons in Australia, I needed players. So the first player, of course, who joined me was my good friend Dougie Walters.
Right.
And Dougie Walters started using Simons, and then eventually started working for Simons and me.
Okay.
With me.
Wow.
Then there was guys like Lenny Pascoe, Murray Bennett, and then the Wars came in, and of course then there was the very big signing of Alan Border, which really began to put Simons on the map. And then of course there was cricketers such as Imran Khan using it, and quite a few Moshin Khan, and quite a few Pakistani players, and then of course Kapil Dev, and quite a few of the Indian players.
Yeah, Azharuddin played with Simons.
Azharuddin, and there was a heap of Indian players, and of course Simons began to grow, and that's when people started to take notice of Simons, and then I needed the young stars to come in, and that's where Mark and Steve came in and initially used Simons, but there was others like Brad McNamara, Wayne Holsworth, and David Thompson, and quite a few great players, So
we are going to get to Simons in a bit more detail down the track, but Harry, one thing I cannot stop but talk about is the iconic Kingsgrove Sports Catalogue. I don't know what it is. There is something about this publication that even a 40-something-year-old like myself enjoys reading from cover to cover. It is usually available by August. We get it in the mail. Even today, I'm excited about it. What was the idea behind this in this day and age of, online marketing and Instagram? I know Kingsgrove Sport is heavily involved in that, but you've still gone ahead with the tradition of publishing this hard copy.
Well, that was I would say what made Kingsgrove Sports. the catalogue. I noticed that when I first came into the industry, and then I was quite young, and this was going back 45 years ago, I noticed that there was not enough information to the people of what cricket gear is available, and mostly the costing. So if people did go to a sports store, they just had to go there and then find out the pricing and about the product. So what happened was that I decided to put out my first catalog, and believe it or not, my first catalog 46 years ago was handwritten. It was handwritten and photocopied, and then sent out to various cricketers. I started building up a database. Then, of course, I started getting it typed, and it was typed with pictures of products actually cut out and pasted and photocopied. And then I suddenly decided the way to go was to bring out a proper printed color catalog. And of course, it started from a very small way. And as we grew, the catalog also got better and bigger and more iconic and more legendary. And the catalog became, in Australia, the Bible for cricketers.
Absolutely.
And, that is probably where the Kingsgrove really started coming of age.
And there's something about this catalog, because I've been following it obviously since 2004. The style has not really changed. The format is pretty much the same. And it is still super exciting just to get this every year. I'll watch TV and I'll still have the catalog and just look at it. The allure of the catalog.
I remember the time when even guys like Adam Gilchrist used to get the catalog, and he said, even as a player and playing for Australia, he says, I still waited for my cricket catalog and I was happy to get it. So it's something that grew and got better. And of course, obviously my staff who are more technologically savvy, and they think that I should change the format. The more current staff think I should change the format, and certainly more of the advertising people. But I generally work on a policy, and it's probably my most important motto is, if it ain't broken, why fix it?
That's it.
That's so it. I generally stick with it, to the reluctance of some of my staff, and even to an extent my wife.
Your staff are going to hate me for saying this, but I think, Harry, I put this in your ear that a good project might be to digitally archive all the catalogs for cricket tragics, because a lot of us don't have access to all the catalogs. I think it's a historic document, given that it is really an iconic piece that is so popular amongst all cricket fans. You've mentioned Adam Gilchrist. If you could, I don't know, maybe save them as PDFs as a part of a legacy of Kingsgrove Sports.
Well, I think it's a great idea you've come up with, and it's probably I've started actually about 20 years ago. I started binding some of the catalogs together in certain decades, and so they've got to go to a bookbinder and be bound. But this idea of doing it online, that's.
Yeah, because
to archive it on computer would be,
because it'd be really interesting. A lot of us, including myself, we've not seen that first catalog that was handwritten. Obviously there is historic value to that.
It's certainly in my it has been archived in my bookbinding that has been done of that decade. Yeah. But I do still get people who call me and say, why haven't we got our catalog?
Yeah.
I said, you haven't you haven't shopped with us for 4 years, so you've been probably taken off the list. And they said, no, but we must receive our catalog. It's a part of history. So there are a lot of people who ring us and say, why haven't we got the catalog? Or by end July, people will be ringing us and asking, why haven't we received it? Or when is it coming?
Yeah.
So, I think we should continue with it, at least till the time that I'm alive.
Yeah, I actually missed one particular catalog because I moved from New South Wales to Queensland and change of address. And I was like, come August, I called in Kingsgrove. I said, please update my address. I haven't received my catalog. So it's just fascinating. It's a fascinating publication.
It's amazing the number of people that contact us about the catalog.
Now, Harry, I want to talk about Kingsport, your brainchild, your brand of cricket bat. What prompted you to come up with your own brand? What is the story behind this particular brand?
That's a pretty good question, Raman. Well, put it this way. Kingsport has been around for about 35 years.
Wow.
So about 35 years ago, I decided I needed a cheaper end brand to go with my Grainicles and Gun&Moore and Kookaburra and Stuart Surridge and Schlesinger, Duncan Fernley, etc. So about 35 years ago, could even be 40 years ago, I came up with the name Kingsport, obviously, because we were a sports store and we were from Kingsgrove. So I came up with the name, which was very easy, name Kingsport. So that's how Kingsport came to be known. But what I did was I started by realizing that I needed a cheaper brand to compete in the market. So what I did was I started initially bringing all my club gear out in Kingsport.
Okay.
So Kingsport, for instance, as a glove and a pad and a thigh pad and even as a bag has been going on for quite a while, probably 35 to 40 years.
Wow.
And that was my cheaper end. But as time went on, and a lot of wholesalers started going direct to the public. And of course, with the onset of online and people shopping elsewhere, I decided that in case something happens, I need to be secure at Kingsgrove. And I needed my own brand, and I needed that own brand to be made famous.
Right.
So, and I needed that brand to become a lot more upmarket. So that's how we started. That's the start of Kingsport as a more upmarket product. And, seriously, it's going pretty well.
Absolutely.
I have to be a little bit tactful because I have a very good relationship with companies like Grainicles, Kookaburra, Gun&Moore, etc. But also a lot of brands such as Stuart Surridge, County, St. Peter's, Schlesinger have fallen by the wayside. So Kingsport takes a nice spot in the market there as an alternative product and an alternative upmarket product. So we do have the upmarket stuff, and we still have my club stuff, which is called Kingsport.
Yep. You've mentioned a lot of brands, Duncan Fernley, Schlesinger, County, and we see that, yeah, it's a shame that especially brands like Duncan Fernley and Schlesinger have fallen off the radar, because people of my vintage, we grew up watching, like some Viv Richards, Alan Border, Mark Waugh, using these iconic brands. But there's been a recent trend, Harry, that I've noticed. And I work in marketing, and I wrote a case study about Kingsgrove Sports published in one of the marketing textbooks, which I still use in some of my classes. But what do you think? Why are brands going back to these retro versions? For example, SG going back to the classic Sunny Tunny. Duncan Fernley's recently relaunched the Duncan Fernley Magnum in the old decals. Why are brands going back to that?
Well, I think mainly for the reason that, like you, they have had a big following. There are a lot of still old cricketers and more mature cricketers who used to live or used to live in the era when these brands were big names, and they created a special spot in these cricketers' lives. Now I know you love the old Simons and you probably like the old Duncan Fernley. So there are cricketers like that who are still, especially with the onset of veterans cricket now, where a lot of cricketers are playing the game a lot longer. So these people like to go back to a bat that they used to have. So when Simons or Duncan Fernley or Stuart Surridge come out or somebody brings it out, there is still a following for those brands from the older cricketers, rather than the more current cricketers who want what they see on television now, basically SS, Kookaburra, Gray Nichols, and Gun and Moore, etc. And there are also a lot of people who, younger people who suddenly take over these brands and think that they can get it, they can revive it, and obviously become millionaires out of it. Sadly, they will not. But there is that certain affection for those older brands, especially if a cricketer like you got a ton with an old Duncan Fernley or a Simons, etc. He'll say, "Oh, I've got that big score with the Duncan Fernley. I should, or with the Stuart Surridge, I should go back." Talking about retro, I think it is, in actual fact, they're not. Even though they are retro models and they made to look, the stickers are made to look. The bats are, of course, the current day more modern bats. Obviously, thicker edges, a little bit of bow, much more elongated middles, bigger toes, more oval shape handles. So even though these are older brands and they use retro names, those bats are more modern, and they certainly perform like modern day bats.
Absolutely. I mean, they look retro, but essentially they're modern bats. So
absolutely.
Just want to talk about Simons a bit more, because I'll probably take 1% of the credit of Simons coming back. About 2017 or 18, I posted on Facebook a picture of Simons, and I actually tagged you. And I said, Harry Solomons, please bring this back. 2019, you had the Kingsgrove Sports podcast where you mentioned that you were thinking, and I think there's one comment on that video by RH_Southpaw, which is me. And I again said, Harry Solomons, please bring this back. And when you decided to bring this back, you actually sent me a message on Messenger saying, Rahman, it will be launched on such and such date at 6 p.m. in front of this very computer. I logged on, 5:55. I had my credit card ready. I kept on refreshing the Kingsgrove Sports page. 6 o'clock, Rhino Charge becomes available. I click add to cart, check out. By the time I checked out, it was 6:02, and they were all sold out. I know I'm part of a lot of these discussion forums on cricket, and there was a lot of excitement. People had logged on at 6:15, and they said it's sold out. I'm like, man, you snooze, you lose. You've not waited over 30 years for this bat. I wasn't going to spend another 15 minutes trying to lose this bat. So I got it off you guys. Sensational bat. I mean, the decals have slightly changed. You've obviously made some. Was that your brainchild, Harry? The entire design of the bat?
Well, the totally bringing of Simons was my brainchild, but I must give credit to my wife here, who had kept hinting to me that I should try and bring back Simons with these retro bands becoming a bit famous. Certainly, I knew that there was a customer base and a love for that product by certain cricketers who, along the way, visiting Kingsgrove, asked me, why don't you bring in Simons? So there was that era of a lot of cricketers at that era who used Simons, starting from myself. and who sold Simons, starting from myself, who would have loved to have owned one.
Mm.
So I knew I knew that if I brought it in, there would be a certain amount of people who are going to go for it. Some would want to use it, and some might want to keep it as just a piece of memorabilia, or just a piece of nostalgic cricket bat. So we bought it in, and we obviously didn't bring a lot in.
Yeah.
And I was astounded. By the popularity. I didn't realize that there would be so many people who just wanted to have another Simons, because a lot of these people who bought it grew up with it as kids.
Absolutely.
And in an era when I was selling it and Kingsgrove was getting quite famous. So they all wanted to be in it. And they all wanted to buy a Simons bat. But one of the important things here is that the bat was designed by me to modern day standards.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that the bats were actually damn good bats.
Oh, that pings like a gun.
And of course, the manufacturer was a new manufacturer, not the old Simons manufacturer. And he did an excellent job in making it. Whether it will hold for the next few years, I'm not sure. Whether I want to do it or whether I can maintain my enthusiasm along with Kingsport to do it and try and move it again or bring it into focus again, that's left to be seen. But it certainly created an impact.
Absolutely. I sincerely hope you continue it. There are lots of us who absolutely love it. And Harry, the thing I really want to mention, without mentioning the name of other brands, there are certain other brands that have brought back their retro versions. And being the cricket geek nerd that I am, I basically very carefully looked at some of those bats, and they are nothing like the old shape. This is where I think the Simons held true to the ethos of the Simons. That Rhino charge is the same shape of the original Rhino charge, just a lot bigger.
Absolutely. Just bigger, thicker edges,
yeah.
And a slightly more pronounced bow.
Right.
So it was very much the same shape.
Yeah, you didn't just take a cricket bat and put on Simons stickers on it. That's the really, really thing about the Simons that I tend to appreciate. It is the exact same bat, probably bigger and better.
Turned out excellently. Very proud of that.
Absolutely. That's brilliant, Harry. And on behalf of 40-plus-year-old cricket tragics, we thank you for taking us back to our childhood.
Pleasure.
Harry, while we're on bats, I know I've heard your interviews in the past, and just for our viewers here, a lot of people, they sometimes come to me because I'm a geek when it comes to bat. What makes a good bat? What is your opinion? What is a good cricket bat?
Well, I think there are the two most important things in a cricket bat, in my opinion, is the pickup and the punch in a bat. So I am not of the complete total belief that a grade one piece of timber or a grade 2 piece of timber is the perfect cricket bat. It can be a good cricket bat if it has an excellent ping or what we call an excellent punch. A good cricket bat also it's got to feel good in a person's or in the cricketer's hands. So if you pick up a bat and it has a good pickup and it has a good punch, which you can get, for instance, my staff to check it out for you in our stores, and you can afford it, that's a good bat. You know. So I have seen bats with, talking about grain, I've seen bats with excellent grain and they have been very good. But I've seen bats with excellent grain and they've been duds. It just depends on that piece of timber or that particular tree that's that particular bat is made of, you know.
Yeah. Do you think, Harry, pressing is also really important when it comes to the punch?
Absolutely. Some people have got the pressing down to a fine art.
Yeah.
And having said that, today the pressing in different bats are slightly changed. The gun and mows, for instance, could be a little bit harder.
Yep.
The Indian handcrafted bats could be a bit softer. Doesn't mean to say the gun and mow is not going to perform, because out there in the middle on the cricket ball, it does perform a lot better. So the pressing is very important. Some people have got it down to a fine art, but the thing is this, that even if you have a bat or a piece of willow that's a dud, and you press it with the best standards possible, doesn't mean to say it's going to be a good bat. So it's very important that the pressing is important, and it's a key element to making a cricket bat. But the piece of that particular piece of willow has got to be a beauty. I've seen grade 5 willows. That's an absolute gem of a bat and can be used by a test player, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I picked up the Gullenmore Travis Head, from you in December. It's got about 13, 14 grains and pings like a cannon. But one of the best bats I picked from you, it's just actually down there. It was in 2016, a Gray Nichols Kaboom David Warner Players Edition, handcrafted by Stuart Cransbuehler. It only has 6 grains. It doesn't look great, but boy, oh boy, is it a cannon. Absolute cannon.
Well, Stuart Cransbuehler is, in my opinion, if not he is the best bat maker possibly in the world. So he makes a good bat, whether it's a Kaboom or whether it's, or whatever he makes, whether it's Aaron Finch product. But what has to be certain is that Stuart, he knows how to pick a bat. He knows how to pick a piece of willow, and it doesn't need it. As you said, it could have 6 grains, but he knows how to make a bat move.
Absolutely. Harry, while we're on the topic of bats, I just want to shift focus to this changing landscape of cricket retail and just retail in general. I know you've talked about it a couple of years ago, but since then we've obviously had this pandemic, which has altered the landscape even more. How do you see this retail industry, especially when it comes to cricket goods, changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's changed heavily over the last 10 years. In the old days, there was a lot more retailers. Now they're becoming far and a few in between, because of the fact that there are more people making cricket gear. There are more people involved in cricket. There's more love for the game. There's more countries playing the game. So there's actually a lot more cricketers, and they all think, they're going to make a buck by starting some cricket bat company or a cricket bat retail store or whatever. But it's certainly changing, and there is a situation where in the old days we had the retailer, and we had the wholesaler, and we had the manufacturer. Now the manufacturer is becoming a retailer, the wholesaler is becoming a bit of a retailer, the retailer is becoming a bit of a manufacturer and a wholesaler. So it's in a state of the industry is in a state of change. And of course, so the reason for me starting Kingsport. Having said that, if you're in a situation where you can support all products reasonably well, like we do at Kingsgrove Sports, I think the opportunities are there to do well. And of course, times are changing. Online sales have become the in thing now. Our online sales have increased by 50%. So the type of trade in the cricket business with more people opening up is changing. And of course, there are so many brands now in the market. As you know, Australia does not have as many as England. There could be 100 brands in England. Because it's a bigger country and more people playing cricket in terms of cricket. So, it is becoming also impossible for retailers such as us to have every product.
Right.
So we still stick with the major brands and the brands that make their product popular. So if you have a brand that players are using and it's a good brand and it's becoming popular, then it's my duty as a major cricket retailer to have your product in. But, it's almost becoming impossible to have every single product. It's 100 different brands. So it's almost impossible for a major retailer to have each brand. So what I would have is the brands that actually do their own promotion and marketing and make their product popular.
Yeah.
So there is another huge market of people left who are making brands with nowhere to sell.
Right.
They go direct.
Yeah.
And so therefore now this online with the onset of online shopping and things like that, there are so many brands available for people to choose, However, as far as Kingsgrove is concerned, we have the major brands and we provided a total service. So from repairs to knocking in to selling, and we sell the major brands who are able to guarantee and warranty their products.
Right. I think, Harry, I just want to go back here to, as a customer of Kingsgrove Sports for many years, and I'm just going to put my marketing hat on because, I've worked with you and rowing you on that case study. But just on a personal level, like going back to how we met, you took the trouble of calling this person you never met just because I sent you an email. I think Kingsgrove Sports, the way it differentiates itself from other businesses now, because nowadays people are selling cricket bats from their garages online. You could just put it on Marketplace and sell it probably at a price cheaper than Kingsgrove Sports because they don't have those overheads. They don't have those employees. So those are obvious. But I think the way Kingsgrove Sports really differentiates itself, and you've touched upon this, is actually service. And it is actually customer relationships. There are very few stores that remember their customers by their first name. This second week of December, when I visited you guys, I was actually just wandering around the store and Rohini saw me and she knew I came from Brisbane. She goes, "Hi, Roman. Oh, Harry's up here." And then obviously I spent 90 minutes talking to you. I don't see other businesses doing that.
It's a bit hard. It's a bit hard for them to do that operating from a garage. Is they have only the one product, their product, whereas we have a heap of different products and we can give them so many different alternatives. Somebody who's operating from his garage is unable to have stock and alternative stock. If you come and you don't have a Grainicles, if I don't have a Grainicles bat, I would have 10 other Grainicles bats. And not only would I have 10, I'd have 10 kookaburras and 20 Ganemos to show you. And not only that, I would have a different range and maybe I'd have 10 different models. But I might have 100 of one model and another 100 of another model. And, so we're in a situation to offer our customers by far a bigger range. Where somebody operates from a garage, this is what you will see. This is what you will get. Yeah. Whereas you can look at the bats on the shelf and then you can on the display racks, and then you can go to the shelves and choose one of 100 of that particular bat, So we have the advantage, and more than the advantage, we have the knowledge and the experience. So that is important. And also we have a situation where we can guarantee our products. Now, The other day, somebody walked up, and this is a perfect case of what you've just said. Somebody walked up with a beautiful limited edition SS bat, bought from elsewhere, but it had smashed the back. Technically, unrepairable. Technically, he should be throwing it away. He can't use it. He should be sending it back to wherever he bought it. But he's bought it online, and the online people don't even want to know about it.
Exactly.
And I said, now you're bringing this to me to find out what your problem is and what you can do with it, whether you can repair it, whether you have to throw it away. Why didn't you buy the bat from us? Because if you bought the bat from us, we would have certainly taken this back and given you a new one.
Absolutely.
Problem solved. He says, but your price was a little bit expensive. But just say I was $50 more expensive. Just say I was $100 expensive.
Yeah.
But what has happened now? He has lost a total bat.
Yeah.
Whereas I could have replaced it or repaired it for him under no charge.
Absolutely. See,
So,
I think,
that's the advantage of going to a reputed retailer.
and I think that's where you guys actually excel, which is that relationship with customers, because a lot of those sellers are actually focusing on that one-time transaction. And then if you've got a problem, sayonara on your bike, sorry, can't help you, But
Absolutely.
I've bought so many bats from Kingsgrove, I've never had to go for repairs. I understand that bats are natural products. They are going to crack, they are going to break. So I make that judgment call myself. But I think maintaining that relationship, knowing that, I've bought a product, if I've got an issue, I can go back to you, or simply even just remembering a customer's name goes a long way in terms of forming that bond between a business and their consumers. So I think you guys are fantastic.
We love our customers at Kingsgrove, and I especially love my customers. And I've got customers who I used to serve who are now bringing their grandchildren. So that's very important that we have that personalized service. Of course, I'm coming to a stage in my life now. I'm 74, and I'll never forget the customer's face, but I've forgotten his name. But it's always a good Australian way of calling him mate.
Yeah.
So my customers are my mates.
I'll tell you, you're a very young 74-year-old, supremely fit, playing cricket. Harry, another facet that excites me about Kingsgrove Sports is your museum and the memorabilia that you have in your museum blows me away. What blew me away last December when I was there with my daughter was that I actually forgot she was with me, because I went upstairs with you and probably spent 90 odd minutes. For the first time in her 18 years, I completely forgot about her. Chatting cricket with you, looking at memorabilia, that boardroom that you have. You showed me a Mark Waugh memorabilia that I think is my favorite, all his 100 tests. I mean, it was celebrating his 100 tests and all his centuries. But what plans do you have with this museum? I mean, you've got a lot to share with the world.
It's funny, isn't it, how I'm sitting here and there's no memorabilia around, yet I can point you towards my my boardroom, my sports room next door, and it's jam-packed with memorabilia. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking at your memorabilia and your beautiful background there, and I've got the plain curtain. But,
I wish we could do this in your office and people would actually be blown away.
Well, actually, I could take you downstairs to my warehouse downstairs where I'm stocking some extra stuff that you haven't seen.
Wow.
And I've got another, 1,000 pieces down there waiting to be, obviously, waiting to be put into a museum. So, one of the reasons I bought this property here in the Hunter Valley is that I would have room to put a decent memorabilia. I can't do it in Kingsgrove, obviously, because at some time or another I've got to leave Kingsgrove. But I need to build a proper museum where I can house this memorabilia and have a legacy and show it to the world. Needs to see it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, my issue is that besides you to open a decent museum, you're going to need finance, and I'll be very frank, I don't have it at the moment. I probably won't have it till I sell Kingsgrove or move out of Kingsgrove. But the idea here was to have this property and have a big enough museum to be able to show all 2,500 or 3,000 products I have,
Yeah.
So that's the idea of the purchase of my property. However, I've lived here for 5 years and I've still not been able to do that. And another issue is that I'm also still stuck with serving my customers and keeping Kingsgrove going. So it's becoming very hard for me to concentrate on the museum while I still have, especially during this COVID era, to also make sure that Kingsgrove is running right and running profitably. Thankfully, I've got a lovely lady. I'm married to a lovely lady, Rohini, who helps me look after the business, and she's been an absolute rock in terms of running the business, and we have survived all that despite 2 years of this COVID. So, it just speaks to the fact that because of our passion, because of the fact that we have the product, we have the service, we have the pricing, we are still able to come up with a decent cricket story. Whereas some of those people who are, I call them fly-by-nighters, fall by the wayside because they're just not reputed enough or big enough or to get become a major part of cricket.
Yep.
We still continue with our sponsorships. We still continue with our assistance of players. So nothing has changed.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about, Harry. I've taken up a lot of your time. We're almost at the end, but I see a lot of involvement of Kingsgrove Sports with community cricket, multicultural cricket in Sydney. What are your plans for Kingsgrove in, let's say, the next 5 years?
Well, certainly I'm not getting any younger, and it as one grows older, one gets a little bit probably what you call tired, and luckily I have a wife who keeps the passion at Kingsgrove going. I've got good young staff who keep the passion going, but the plans are obviously eventually I have to get rid of it and ride into the sunset. Having said that, I got to ensure that whoever I give Kingsgrove to is going to continue the legacy.
Absolutely.
Whoever I give Kingsgrove to is not going to run it down and just fall apart and let others come and take over. So it's got to be somebody who has the passion to continue, but more than continuing, to improve Kingsgrove and to make it better. So the reason I say that is because I have worked too hard. Only him up there, the Lord, knows how hard I've worked in a country such as Australia, where we had so much opposition in the old days, to still be around and running a profitable business and a decent shop, a decent retail cricket shop. So eventually I will have to get rid of it. And if there's any of your listeners out there with a lot of money, they're welcome to contact us.
I wish I had it. I'd jump in. That'd be like a dream come true. Harry, we're almost at the end. I've taken up a lot of your time. I'm going to ask you 10 questions.
As much as you want. I'm enjoying this.
10 questions. I'm going to ask them really quickly, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them quite quickly as well. Wow. They're called rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what is your favorite cricketing memory? You've played cricket yourself. What is your favorite memory?
Well, I've probably got two. One is when I got picked in the Australian over 70s side. I'll put it this way, everybody wants to play for Australia. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I'll settle for the second best. I missed out on the 60s and I got into the Australian 70s side, and I've been in the Australian 70s side on 2 tours. So
Wow.
that's a great cricketing memory for me. The other one was when I was a young cricketer. I scored 100. I think it was 173. I was showing one of my staff members the article only the other day. I scored 173 in no time, and I had 17 sixes and 3 fours in that 173. Not out.
Wow.
Yeah, 17 sixes and only 3 fours. So I still think that was a great part of my achievement.
Just going beyond this question, you've played with the likes of Doug Walters, haven't you?
No. Dougie was a class of his own. He still is was one of my favorite cricketers. I have played socially with Dougie.
Okay.
Toured various countries. I've sometimes outscored him, and mostly he's outscored me. Dougie was just a legend.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 of your favorite cricketers are Mark Waugh and Doug Walters, aren't they?
Certainly. Yeah.
I mean, I probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. M.E. Waugh or S.R. Waugh, the better Waugh?
Well, I like Mark Waugh with Steve Waugh's temperament.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? We'd see a lot more runs from him.
Absolutely, they're both great cricketers. Mark Waugh was a super talent, so you love Mark Waugh's talent and ability, and Steve Waugh's temperament and tenacity. What a cricketer you'd have!
Absolutely. I mean, my viewers are going to laugh at this, but the day Mark Waugh retired, I had tears in my eyes. I was absolutely heartbroken. And I could never be a fan of Darren Lehman because he took Mark Waugh's place in the side.
It's amazing, isn't it, Rahman, that over my career, when I first came to Australia, Ian Chappell was captain, and then Greg Chappell took over, and then it was the Kim Hugheses and the Graham Yallops, and then it was the Mark Taylors and the Steve Waughs and the Ricky Pontings, and I'm still going, and they've retired, and they're commentators and older people now in the game, and we're seeing a new generation of young players like Cummings and Smith coming on. And Harry Solomon's and Kingsgrove Sports Centre is still in business.
You're still here.
You haven't retired yet.
That's it. Harry, what was your first bat? Do you remember it?
Yes, it was, I think it was in Sri Lanka. It was a Neil Harvey. Neil Harvey signed Greenwich. I think it was Greenwich bat. And then I had a borrowed Don Bradman Schlesinger bat, which was an absolute rocket of a bat. In Australia, my first bat was actually, it was a county sold to me by ex New South Wales player called Tony, I think it was Steele, David Steele or Tony Steele. Anyway, so it was a county. And then, of course, for a long time, I used to love the Gray Nichols super short bats.
All right. And now that you're playing veterans cricket, what's your current bat?
Oh, current bat's a Kingsports.
Kingsport?
Kingsports. I do have a good Stuart Cransbuller made breakers in my bag, but I dare not take it out in case of the sledging. But the current bat's a Kingsports.
So there is sledging in veterans cricket?
Oh, subtle hints, not bad. And you always end up having a drink after that. So,
That's it.
Good.
Moving on. Next question. You've obviously been following cricket all your life. You've seen the evolution of cricket, now the different formats, the rules being changed. Of all the rules, sometimes I even can't keep track of the rules. What is one rule in cricket you would want changed?
Well, very good question. I think the LBW decision of giving a player LBW not out in LBW where he's pretty plumb and the ball's just been 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters outside the leg stump. Have you thought of that?
So you mean pitching outside leg? You want to take that out?
If you're a batsman
Yeah.
and the ball pitches an inch out of the leg stump, but it's
Still going to hit the stumps.
and it's going to hit stumps, and he's played right back and it's hitting plumb LBW. Everybody knows it's going to be plumb out, and therefore the ball's been 2 inch outside or centimeter outside the leg stump, and the umpire says not out.
So do you want to take that rule completely out, that even if it pitches outside leg?
In the opinion of the umpire, if the ball is going to be dead set, hit the batsman right in the middle, and the stumps are going to be shattered, and he's hitting low down, why should it be why should it doubt?
But what if
it's a very unfair rule to the bowler?
What if it pitches, let's say it's Shane Warne bowling, and he bowls 6 inches outside leg, but it spins viciously?
6 or 7 inches, and the batsman playing forward, I can understand that. But there have been, where fast bowlers who just swing the ball in slightly, and the ball's pitched that much outside the leg stump, and he's hit him plumb in the middle, going to shatter all his stumps, and the umpire says not out, or the DRS shows it as not out.
Yeah.
Because it's been a centimeter or 2 outside the leg stump. I think that's unfair. Unfair to the bowler.
Interesting. You may want to take it up with your good friend Kumar Sangakkara, president of the MCC. Of the 3 different formats, I'm not including the 100 as a format yet, but T20, ODI, and Test cricket, which one's your favorite?
I'm beginning to enjoy the 2020 and the ODIs. And, I always love Test cricket. A good Test match is always good. But I think with now the 100s coming in, I think there's far too much cricket.
Yeah.
There's far too much cricket. And what we're beginning to see is we're beginning to see average players playing for their countries. Because he's a Test player. He's billed as a Test player. He's billed as an ODI player. He's billed as a T20 player. I'd like to see, as Dougie Walters once told me, there's so much of cricket being played now, and especially with the 100s coming in, you got so much of cricket. You take the best of the limited over and the best of the T20 and make it a 35 over. So you don't have all this traveling.
Yep.
You don't have all this situation where you see mediocre players. You still see the best of the players, and you, instead of the 2 formats a game and the people having to spend money on all these formats of the game.
Yep.
You have a 35 over game.
That's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that. That is a really interesting one.
Dougie Walters brought that up with me once, and I think he has a very serious point there.
Absolutely, because we've got Test cricket, and those of us who are purists absolutely love it. And there's something that I say that in Test cricket, even a dot ball has a story to tell. There's a reason why it's a dot ball. And then there's T20, very convenient, 3 hours after work, you come back home, watch it, great. I personally think, in my humble opinion, one-day cricket is getting lost somewhere, because there is a period in one-day cricket where it's really boring. Not a lot is happening. Barring the World Cup, I personally don't follow a lot of these bilateral series anymore, because as you said, there's just too much cricket, going on. So we've got to strike a balance between the business side of it and actually maintaining the authenticity or the value of these matches.
Well, if you mix the two, you can have more 35 over cricket.
That's it. Yeah.
And you don't have T20 or you don't have ODIs. It can go as together. So, it has a point, especially if the 100 balls is going to come in.
Yeah. I probably know the answer to who your favorite batsman is, but if I were to ask you, who's your favorite cricketer of all time?
Well, my favorite cricketer of all time is also probably my favorite batsman, and that's Viv Richards.
Vivian Richards.
I wonder who you're going to think about when you thought you knew who my favorite batsman is.
I think if I remember that podcast, you correct me if I'm wrong, you probably mentioned Mark Waugh and Doug Walters, was it? There was Viv Richards in there as well.
I think Mark Waugh was probably, to me, was an entertainer.
Yeah.
Entertainer. Dougie Walters, to me, was a good cricketer, but a great guy.
Okay.
You know, but in terms of the players that I have seen, I think in terms of the way he could bat, be it Test, be it ODI, and geez, God help us if he was playing T20 now, isn't he?
Oh, geez, with one of these big bats.
Yeah, and he was just such a cool dude. The way he carried himself, the no helmet, the way he walked around, that confidence he had in his ability. Him as a fielder, and he could have been anything as a bowler. He would have been a great little bowler. He's in T20 even, you know. Yeah. I don't think I have seen, they can talk of many cricketers. I don't think I have seen any better than the great Vivian Richards.
And you had the great man over at Kingsgrove Sports a few years ago, didn't you?
Absolutely, been around. He's been to Kingsgrove Sports a couple of times. Great guy, and a damn good cricketer.
All right, Harry, just got a few more questions. Other than cricket, what other sports do you follow? Do you follow any other sport?
Yeah, I follow a little bit of all sports. I love watching athletics.
Oh, really?
I love watching athletics, especially international athletics. Good athletics is just awesome, isn't it? The 400 meters, 200 meters, 800 meters, and the 1,500 meters. Amazing events. And the relays. So I love watching athletics, especially in the Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games, and things like that. In terms of following, obviously, being a New South Walesman, I love my league. I used to play a lot of soccer myself. Some people told me that I was a better soccer player than I was a cricketer.
Really?
Or what we call football. Yeah.
Football. It's football, Harry. It's football. We know that.
Known as football. Where I grew up, it was football. It was after I came to Australia, it became soccer. But I think being a New South Wales, I love my rugby league, and I follow in terms of what I follow, a sport I follow, I would say rugby league. I follow a bit of rugby union. I used to play rugby union in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
I used to play a fair bit of rugby union. I love watching a bit of tennis, you know.
So what's your rugby league team? The Bulldogs?
They are the Bulldogs.
There we go.
Having said that, I'm not... Today, I used to be a passionate Bulldogs fan, and I still am a Bulldogs fan. But I love to see the bottom end of the ladder doing well. I love to see the West Tigers go well. I love to see Newcastle do well. I love Penrith, the fact that they're a bit out of town. I love the way they play, you know. Yep. So I like to see these teams that are doing it tough.
Yeah, the underdog.
You know, Penrith did it tough for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, and I even now like to see the Broncos come up because they're doing it tough.
Harry, you've got thousands, and I personally have seen thousands. You've got 1,000 pieces of cricket memorabilia. Out of all of that treasure, if you will, what is one piece of memorabilia that is your absolute favorite?
I've got a few that are my favorites. I think Mark Waugh's and Steve Waugh's first test match.
Yep, I've seen those.
Have to be. I've got both their first test bats.
Wow,
that has to be one of my sentimental favorites. I have a 8-foot by 4-foot framed team of the framed picture or a photo of the Invincibles, Don Bradman's Invincibles, personally signed for me.
Wow.
And dated when they signed it. when I personally visited them.
Yeah.
So I personally visited Neil Harvey. I personally visited Keith Miller. I personally visited the Don. Personally visited all the other players that actually signed that. And there's 2 or 3 players who haven't signed it. That was Don Talon, to remind me of one. Don Talon, Lindsay Hassett, and Russell McCool. They died before I could get to them.
Oh, okay.
But this was it's an 8 foot by 4 foot frame picture of the Invincibles Australian 1948 team.
48 team.
So I personally took it to each one of them, had a conversation with them, and they signed it for me, including the great Don Bradman. That has to be my top piece and one of my favorites. And I've got a 1932 piece of Don Bradman playing on the back foot. It's a big piece, personally signed. It's the only one of its kind, with about 8 other pictures of him around that, signed by Don Bradman and dated in 1932. Now, Don Bradman never dated his sign or his signature. This one is personally dated 1932.
Wow.
So that's in my office. That's certainly one of my sentimental.
That's 90 years old now. Wow. That must be priceless. Absolutely.
Yes, that's priceless. That's one off piece.
Harry, we're right at the end. One final question. Describe Kingsgrove Sports Centre in one word.
You use that word before. Iconic.
Iconic.
Yeah. If I was to use another word, legendary. If I was to use another word, maybe historic.
I think iconic sums it all up.
I think iconic is good enough for me.
Iconic absolutely sums it all up, and you are the man behind the brand. And it's been, I only requested for 20 minutes of your time, but I've lost track of time. And this always happens every time I talk to you. I lose track of time, forget about my daughter, It's been an absolute pleasure, Harry. I'm sure people listening to this are absolutely going to love it. They've learned so much. And that was my whole objective, because you literally are a walking cricket encyclopedia. And can't thank you enough for sharing all of your insights. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Rahman, to you and your viewers, good luck and thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure. And I wish it actually went on a little longer, because it's very interesting and it brings up all the things that I have to think about one day and probably put it in a book.
Absolutely. So I think that'd be great.
Maybe you should write it.
I'm always there. Whatever Kingsgrove needs me, if you ever need me, I'm always there, free of charge. I do it out of passion. I just out of passion. It's my hobby. There are 2 things I can talk about: marketing and cricket. I get paid for one of them. The other one, I do it for free.
Lovely talking to you, mate, and all the best. Good luck.
Thanks a lot, Harry. Thanks a lot. And I hope to catch up with you next time I'm in Sydney.
Wonderful. All the best. You take care.
Thanks, Harry.
Patrick